Hi, my name is Joe Colantuoni, and I work as an economist for the FDIC in Washington, D.C. I've been teaching for the Carey Business School for about 10 years, and I teach primarily finance classes, financial institutions, corporate finance, investments, and derivatives classes. The Carey Business School makes it very easy to prepare for courses because one of the first steps I take as a faculty member is to go to the Blackboard site and to download the standardized syllabus for courses. Over time, the standardized syllabus covers core material that's presented in each of the classes. I'll download the information from Blackboard, get updated information on textbooks that are used, and also go ahead and draft new slides and new course information, exercises, and use that information in preparation for the classes. When I've got all the new and relevant information kind of updated, I'll repost that to Blackboard and to notify students that information is available. I use Blackboard a lot in my class preparation because that's the primary medium through which I communicate with students, and I find it very effective. This is a real challenge, but I find that sticking to a regular routine when teaching classes really helps, and also trying to gauge the level of prior experience. Students, when they take finance classes, have a wide range of different backgrounds, and if you're teaching over their ability or comprehension, you often find that the class is very quiet and unresponsive. I've found that usually going over presenting material in very simplistic fashion to begin with, reviewing slides, and then going over simple exercises in class, and then reinforcing that with more complex problems that are done in group exercises really helps to bring students' engagement up to a new level. Often students won't participate individually, but when they're brought together in groups, they become more energized about certain topics and will respond even though they haven't talked at earlier places in the class. I really stick to a very basic routine. Allocate probably the first half hour to an hour of class for every 3-hour class or lecture that I teach. Dedicate the first hour to lecture slides, review those, and as simple examples are presented in those slides, I'll often have in-class exercises to illustrate very basic concepts in finance. Then I'll move on, and in the second hour of class, often have group exercises or more complex in-class exercises so that I can challenge students a little more. And then the last part of class is usually involves review of many of the exercises that we've gone over to really reinforce the concepts with students. This is very difficult as a professor when you're teaching material that's very technical in nature. If you have a lot of experience and in the industry, as I have worked in the federal government sector for a number of years, I can answer many questions because my work experience directly relates to what I'm teaching in the classroom. So for many answers, it's relatively straightforward and easy, but often you do get very challenging questions, and it's one of the hardest things to do as a teacher to admit that you may not actually have a direct answer for a question a student's posed, but to say that you'll get back to them, go and research it, and definitely provide a very comprehensive, useful answer. Really, the biggest challenge is making sure that you're teaching at an adequate level, graduate level, and making sure that the class really contains a lot of academic rigor. This is one of the biggest challenges facing someone teaching at the university, because you want to assess what students' backgrounds are, but you want to make sure that new material is presented in a straightforward manner, but also at a very high level, something that really challenges the students and certainly makes them, challenges themselves and makes them better, more informed, more knowledgeable about the topics presented, and also develop the critical thinking skills that are so important when they graduate eventually and apply a lot of the concepts they learned in graduate school. It's really the wide variety of backgrounds that you find at Carey. This school attracts students from around the world, and really their background, especially in my particular area of finance, their backgrounds are different, they vary. And really a big challenge is to find out what they know at an earlier stage in the course, and then kind of adapt the level of the course so that every student gets the most out of the course lectures and the course exercises. This takes a lot of extra effort on the part of the faculty, but I really insist on making sure that some assignments are given at the early part of the first two class sessions, and make sure that if an assignment, a homework assignment or a quiz is given, that I grade those and give feedback to the students in a very timely fashion, usually within the first 2 weeks of the course. Usually this may involve actually having them conduct the homework assignment or the quiz in class, me grading it, and then scanning the information, their graded assignments, and sending it back by email and posting their grades to Blackboard, so they really get immediate feedback. I've found that it's very useful for them, because if they have trouble with course material, it's better to know about that at an earlier stage in the course, and giving this early feedback is one way to alert them. And I'm very proud to say that when students are having a difficult time at the beginning of a course and they get a poor assessment, they often pay more attention, become more engaged, and then spend extra time working on the class, and usually the end result is very good. I either do it in one of two ways. One is to just schedule another class in-person session, reserve a room, and arrange for the class to meet on a different day than the regularly scheduled sessions. But I find the more useful method for making up sessions is to use Adobe Connect, the online system. If you make reservations for that and establish the system, an audio bridge and video presentation, I can present pretty much all of the same information that I cover in an in-class session online. And it takes a little bit of experience and practice at using Adobe, but I've found it to be very effective once you get that experience. It is an investment on the part of the faculty to learn all the features of Adobe Connect and how to make sure that those sessions go very well. So practice beforehand, and familiarizing yourself with the Adobe Connect system will certainly help. But making up class sessions certainly facilitated by the use of Adobe Connect. I would suggest being prepared, organized, and certainly on time. When preparing for classes, make sure you review all of the lecture material and exercises that you'll be going over ahead of time. Make sure that the information is relevant and up to date, and practicing the material beforehand certainly helps in student comprehension. And staying organized, making sure that when you're presenting your lectures at the beginning, you have all the materials ready, and to make sure that the audiovisual equipment and your use of Blackboard and any internet sites or supplementary materials are readily available and work. There's nothing more challenging than getting into a lecture and then having some technological equipment not work for you, or not be able to show an important example from an internet site. So preparation and organization very key in terms of preparing for classes. I think staying relevant and staying current is the most important bit of information I could give to new faculty. It's easier to do when you're working full-time in the industry in which you're teaching. You can take the current topics and current technologies that are at work in the industry and effectively present those in class, but you still have to put forth the effort to stay up to date on what the new knowledge is or new methodologies. It's very important to be informed and to make sure that you translate that information effectively from the real world into the academic setting, and vice versa. In many cases with the lecture material, making sure that you present it in an academic fashion and then give real-world examples will help bridge that gap between industry practice and what's actually taught in the classroom. But staying relevant and staying current is an essential element of that whole strategy. It has to be the globally diverse group of students that I work with in every lecture. They come from all parts of the world, and I teach finance, but I absolutely love hearing their stories about their own, where they come from and how finance directly affects them. It seems that the topic of finance in the field really crosses all geographic boundaries. But people learn about it in different ways, and they experience it in their own lives in different ways. And I really enjoy sharing stories about finance, the application of topics that I present in class and how it's applied in different countries. It's one of the most rewarding aspects of actually teaching with this globally diverse group of students. Teach if you really love it, because when you love teaching as much as I have, it comes naturally, and all the work and the effort and the preparation that goes into making an effective lecture and effectively conveying your field of information to students and getting them excited about it and being enthusiastic is really only going to come if you truly love the topic itself. And I love finance, and I love conveying what I know to students. Enjoy it very much.